I am Anders Hagstrom with the Daily Caller. We're here for your Thursday morning dispatch. Dylan, thanks so much for coming on. How are you?
Doing great, ready to get to the news.
Exactly. And some surprising news we have for our leadoff story here, or at least it's surprising to most people, I think. We've been arguing a lot about vaccine mandates, whether or not Americans support them across the board, or where Americans support them in schools generally. And now we have a Fox News morning consult poll that found that, in fact, more than half of Americans support at least some form of vaccine mandate and vaccine passports for grocery stores and this sort of thing. Dylan, what are the exact details in which like people actually said that they support vaccine mandates, and what do you think this means for people who've been pushing for a vaccine mandate on the federal level?
Yeah, so the poll found that basically about 50% exactly of Americans said that they were okay with people, businesses or cities requiring proof of vaccination to go to, indoor activities like going to the gym or going to a restaurant and things like that. And then about 50% said that they were asked, what is more important? Is it protecting people from the coronavirus with vaccine mandates, or is it protecting people's right to choose not to get vaccinated? And about 50% said that they thought that protecting people from COVID with vaccine mandates was more important. And then there were other, other numbers in there as well that kind of suggested the same thing, that people were generally supportive of people having to wear masks in schools if they weren't vaccinated. So either having to get vaccinated or wear a mask. People saying that, about 44% said they were more likely to shop at a store that required vaccination, only 24% less likely. So overall, it found, it wasn't overwhelming numbers by any means, but about half of Americans, give or take, were generally receptive to vaccine mandates of some kind, and kind of punishing people that don't have a vaccine yet. And I think, on one hand, it may be surprising. A lot of people have, especially in conservative circles, been talking about how it's, a violation of people's right to control what they put in their body to make them get the vaccine, or it's, wrong morally to create two kind of parallel societies, one for the vaccinated, one for the unvaccinated. But about 70% of American adults have a vaccine at this point. And so when you think about it, if you are someone that's vaccinated, especially if you're not someone that's super political and you're just kind of going about your business, you're probably not really that concerned about having to prove that you're, vaccinated if you are vaccinated, and you're ready to get back to normal life and be able to do things again. So I think on one hand, it's maybe surprising at first when you see, but if you think about it a little bit more, considering that 70% are vaccinated and 50% are okay with vaccine mandates, it kind of lines up with what you might expect, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think part of this is the fact that a lot of vaccinated Americans are thinking, well, I got vaccinated, but I'm not really seeing the benefits of my vaccination anymore. Obviously for a while there, it was like, yeah, you can forego masks indoors, you can do all these different things, and now it seems like we're going back to like the September 2020 situation where it doesn't matter whether you're vaccinated or not. You have to wear masks indoors. This is the CDC guidance, and so Americans are sort of like, well, what was the point of getting vaccinated then? I mean, obviously there are the objective health benefits to being vaccinated, but in terms of being able to return to normal life, it seems like a lot of the benefits to getting vaccinated have been stripped away, at least in the last couple months or so, couple weeks, I would say. But moving on to our second story here. Gavin Newsom, he's the governor of California, at least for now. He's not having a good time. Obviously, he is facing a recall election in September, and it seems like the stress of the recall election is sort of getting to him. He was having a virtual press event um, yesterday, and reporters were pressing him on some like really bad numbers, when it comes to California. Obviously, insane housing costs, wage stagnation for everyone who isn't Mark Zuckerberg and a Silicon Valley sort of tycoon person. And he was faced with these numbers, and he got sort of angry with reporters. Dylan, what exactly happened here, and do you think that this is a picture of Gavin Newsom sort of just unraveling before our eyes?
Honors, this is the video and the sign of a very stressed out and not very confident man facing his demons. It really was funny. I mean, it makes you think politicians, they're just like us. They get stressed too. They get frustrated with questions. And, Newsom was asked basically by this reporter, which is a great question, by the way. Shout out to this reporter, just outstanding work. Basically, he listed off these various problems with California, like you were alluding to. We've got housing shortages, a bunch of homeless people, wildfires, energy shortages, COVID. People are pissed about what you did with all that, blah, 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 all these things. What makes you think you have the right to continue leading the state was essentially the question, phrased a little bit nicer than that, but not that much nicer. And Newsom, said that he was afraid. I don't know what if I'm allowed to curse on here, so I won't quote him word for word. But he accused everybody outside the state of complaining too much about California, and started going off and saying, we're better than this at Texas, we're better than that at New York and Florida, and naming all these stats and things. And he notably, I thought, was arguably the most interesting part, was said that he's a future ex-governor, and that will be either in a few weeks or a few years. Which means he's acknowledging at least that he is vulnerable here to this recall. And I think if you asked people a few months ago, what are the odds that Newsom actually loses office in this recall? I think even the most optimistic of Newsom opponents would have said, well, it's kind of a win that we even got the recall, but realistically, it's very unlikely that he's going to get removed from office. And now polling is tightened up. Even he's acknowledging that he's at serious risk here, serious jeopardy of losing his office. And you look at all the issues that are happening, again, the re-implementation of some of these COVID measures, the ongoing fires that are happening, and summer's always a rough time energy-wise for California. He's in some deep trouble, and he obviously is aware of that, and it looks like it's getting to him.
Yeah, I mean, this is every time I remember California, it's like, oh yeah, that's the state that like controls how often you can turn on your water faucet, right? Like this, it's almost like a third world country. It's absolutely amazing, For the people that have homes, they're having them burned down in wildfires, and then there's hundreds of thousands of homeless people also just on the streets. So California not having a good time right now. Moving on to our last story, though. President Biden, going back to the national level, he's been very clear about his anti-oil practices in the United States. He's been cracking down on efforts to do offshore drilling, or really capitalize on any of America's oil resources domestically. Except yesterday, Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor, sent a letter to OPEC, the Middle Eastern sort of oil conglomerate, and asked them to increase production, which is incredible because obviously we're seeing crazy spikes in oil prices in the U.S. And we're now resorting to asking a foreign organization to increase their oil production in order to help Americans, when in reality, all we need to do is start producing more oil domestically, and it could be cleaner, it would be much more efficient, it would be much cheaper, and we wouldn't have these problems anymore. Except Biden simply isn't willing to take advantage of our domestic product. So it seems pretty surprising that Biden would be so blatant on this. Do you think that Biden's really going to be taken to task on this issue, Dylan?
Realistically, no. But I think enough people are noticing that at least it's going to be an embarrassing moment. But it's obvious, really, what's been happening here. I mean, we already kind of saw a version of this play out with the Keystone Pipeline. You have the Keystone Pipeline get canceled, say we're not going to allow this to go forward and be completed. But then the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, we are going to allow to be completed because somehow the Russian oil is better and cleaner and not as harmful for the environment, I guess, than ours. It's absurd. It makes no sense. And so when you saw that happen, this is basically the same dynamic as that is happening at a larger scale, that we're canceling the Keystone Pipeline. We are not allowing new drilling. All these different policies are putting in place to kind of hamper our own oil production, and then going to our good friends rights respecters in the Middle East and telling them they should just keep on pumping more and more. It's hypocritical is not the right word. Stupid doesn't seem like quite the right word either. It's just bewildering, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And this is niche enough of an issue, I think, that a lot of people probably won't notice, and it won't hurt them too much. But Who knows? Maybe if gas prices keep going up, along with everything else, particularly gas prices, that will raise some eyebrows, and people will start to say, maybe this isn't working out too well for us.
Yeah, it seems like, I mean, in this, as it is in so many other areas of international commerce in America, it seems like rules for me but not for thee is how we sort of approach this. We hold ourselves to a higher standard, and sort of kneecap our ability to compete in these foreign markets. And it's especially true when it comes to the oil issues, when we could be producing as much oil as we could ever need in this country, at least for a few hundred years. Anyways, Dylan, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Anders.